There is a special kind of panic that only extraction shooters can provide. It is not normal panic. It is not dignified panic. It is the sort of panic where you hear one distant gunshot, forget how doors work, crouch into a corner watching a room with two entrances and start whispering to yourself like a man who has made several poor financial and tactical decisions. And then active matter comes along and asks, what if we did all that but also made reality drunk? Gravity anomalies, creepy multiverse nonsense, monsters that look like HR incidents, and a time loop premise where death is apparently less of a failure state and more of a scheduling inconvenience. Lovely. So yes, welcome to the Haunted Loop Blender. You go in brave, you come out suspicious of bushes, and somewhere in the middle you convince yourself that sprinting towards the terrible noise is probably a sophisticated tactical decision. It is not, but it is funny when it happens to someone else. Raiders, my name's Beard of Oz, and today I'll be talking about Active Matter, a tactical extraction shooter from Matter Team and Gaijin Network set in a fractured multiverse full of unstable zones, active matter, hostile players, angry creatures, and environmental weirdness that seems specifically designed to ruin your afternoon. Extraction shooters are built on one beautifully unpleasant idea: getting into danger is easy, getting out with anything worth keeping is the actual game. You drop into a hostile space, scavenge, fight, panic, make greedy little backpack decisions, and then try to extract before another player, a monster, a bad route, or your own overconfidence turns your inventory into someone else's Christmas morning. Active Matter takes that familiar structure and gives it a proper science fiction migraine. You are an operative trapped in a time loop, headed into quantum unstable zones to collect active matter, fight altered creatures, survive anomalies, gather loot, and hopefully get back out before the zone collapses and takes your confidence with it. Disclosure up front, because we are respectable adults here, the game key was provided to me by the developers. They've not paid me to say nice things, they've not replaced my critical thinking department with marketing syrup, and everything here is based on my own time within the game so far. Let me frame this properly. Active Matter offers both PvE and PvP facing options, and that distinction matters a lot in an extraction shooter. The same map can feel like a tense little survival puzzle in PvE, then become a full psychological experiment the moment other players are involved. Suddenly, every doorway has motives, every window is a personal threat, every loud gunfight becomes a dinner bell for anyone nearby with ammunition and ambition. So here is the important caveat: I've only played the PvE side so far. That means I can talk honestly about the loop, the atmosphere, the looting, the crafting, the map learning, the anomalies, and how it feels to move through these zones without another human being turning my spine into downloadable content. What I cannot do yet is pretend to have a definitive opinion on the PvP meta, squad pressure, spawn knowledge, camping, or whether open raids become electric or simply teach me new swear words. The thing Active Matter gets right early is that the systems feel interwoven rather than bolted together with hope and menu glue. You're not just looting because the box opened and gave you a nice noise, you're looting because those resources feed into refining, crafting, base improvement, gear access, and the next run. The stuff you bring home has a job to do. That matters because extraction games live and die on whether you care about the backpack. If the loot is meaningless, the raid becomes a walking simulator with sudden paperwork. If the loot matters too much, every death feels like being slapped by an accountant. Active Matter, from what I've played, lands in a satisfying middle ground where I want to grab one more thing, refine one more resource, craft one more useful piece of kit, and then immediately make the terrible decision to go back in. The refining and crafting side gives the loop a longer tail. It's not just find gun, lose gun, become sad. It's more like find material, refine material, craft something useful, improve your odds, become briefly confident, then remember the universe has other plans. That is the good stuff. That is the goblin brain economy working exactly as intended. It also gives PvE a proper sense of purpose. Even without stepping into open raids yet, I still have that familiar extraction shooter feeling of weighing greed against survival. Do I keep pushing for more monster components? Do I risk another room? Do I take the safe route out with what I have? Do I pretend that leaving early is tactical mastery rather than fear in a hat? These are decisions that make the genre tick. And because the looting, refining, crafting, and upgrade paths all feed into each other, the game avoids feeling like a pile of disconnected systems. Each successful extraction nudges you forward, each failure still teaches something. Each return to base gives you that dangerous little thought, I am better prepared now, which, in extraction shooter language, usually means you're about 4 minutes away from learning humility. One of the more interesting parts of Active Matter is the character sleeve system. It gives the game a neat in-universe way of talking about bodies, builds, and playstyle without simply calling it a class system and making everyone stand in the usual queue of assault, support, sneaky gremlin, and medic with emotional baggage. Sleeves and perks let you shape how you approach a raid. Maybe you want to move lighter and cleaner, maybe you want to lean into survivability, maybe you want a setup that gives you more confidence when poking around dangerous spaces where reality has clearly skipped several workplace safety meetings. The important thing is that Active Matter gives you knobs to turn without making the whole thing feel like an MMO talent spreadsheet wearing tactical gloves. That sort of customization is especially valuable in a game that supports solo play and small squad play. A solo player wants different kinds of safety nets than a coordinated group. A cautious looter does not necessarily need the same setup as someone who hears gunfire and immediately starts jogging toward it like an idiot with a dream. Sleeves and perks help Active Matter make room for those different temperaments. The big win here is the system supports identity without completely swallowing the shooter. You are still reading the map, managing risk, choosing gear, listening for threats, and trying to become a loot pinata. The perks are seasoning, not the entire meal, and in a genre where balance can turn to a flaming spreadsheet very quickly, that restraint is welcome. It also means there is room to experiment. That matters. If every player is pushed towards one obvious best build, the game starts dressing everyone in the same tactical pajamas. If the sleeve and perk options keep supporting multiple viable approaches, Active Matter has a much better chance of avoiding that grim fate where every raid is just clones of the current YouTube thumbnail loadout staring at each other across a warehouse. The combat side sits in an interesting place. The weapons feel grounded enough that positioning, caution, and noise discipline matter, but Active Matter does not seem desperate to drown you in ammunition spreadsheets. And honestly, good. I say that as someone who enjoys a crunchy system, but there is a line between depth and needing a minor in ballistics before you are allowed to leave the menu. The lack of an overly in-depth ammunition system feels like a deliberate choice to maintain a semblance of balance. In some extraction shooters, ammo becomes the real weapon, the gun becomes a delivery tube, and the meta turns into everyone chasing the same mathematically blessed bullet because apparently fun was patched out in favour of penetration charts. Active Matter, at least so far, feels like it is trying to avoid falling too hard into that trap. Gear still matters. Loadouts still matter, preparation still matters, but the game is not asking me to spend half my life comparing microscopic stat differences so I can discover that one bullet type has rendered every other decision decorative. That is not to say simplicity automatically equals balance. PvP will be the real test. Once players start optimizing, they will find the strongest routes, safest kits, nastiest angles, and whatever weapon combination causes the most forum arguments per minute. But by not letting ammunition complexity become the entire identity of the combat system, Active Matter gives itself a better chance of keeping fights readable and loadouts varied. Because I've only played PvE so far, this is where my impressions are the strongest. Active Matter's world feels hostile in a way that goes beyond simply placing enemies on patrol routes. The altered creatures, strange objects, and anomalies all contribute to the sense that you are not just invading a map, you are trespassing somewhere reality does not want you. That blend of tactical kit and what if physics had a nervous breakdown sci-fi horror works better than it has any right to. One minute you are thinking about routes, supplies, sightlines, and whether your backpack has room for just one more questionable object. The next minute the environment is doing something deeply rude to your expectations of space and gravity. The best thing is that the PvE threats have not just felt like target practice. They slow you down, force decisions, and make you pay attention. Do I go around? Do I risk the shortcut? Do I fight that thing? Do I grab the shiny nonsense and leg it? Active Matter gives you enough of those judgment calls to make each run feel less like a checklist and more like a sequence of small bad ideas you somehow have to survive. I am still slowly learning the maps, and that is a big part of the appeal. In extraction shooters, map knowledge is basically a superpower. Knowing where loot spawns, where enemies patrol, where the nasty angles are, and which route gets you extracted instead of turned into a cautionary tale is half the game. Right now, I'm still in that building looks familiar, unless it is a completely different building and I'm about to die phase, but I like that. I like when a game makes the world feel hostile not just because enemies exist, but because the space itself is something you have to learn. The layouts, the sightlines, the routes, the little environmental reads. That slow burn learning curve is doing work here. Solo play has been enjoyable because the game lets tension breathe. You're alone with your route, your gear, your bad instincts, and whatever the zone decides to throw at you. It is satisfying to extract with a bag full of useless resources, not because the game threw confetti at me, but because I know I had several chances to get greedy and ruin everything. The open raids are where the bigger questions sit. PvE can build atmosphere, progression can build attachment, and map design can build mastery, but PvP decides whether all of that becomes electric or annoying. If the PvP rewards smart positioning, sound decisions, and calculated risk, brilliant. If it becomes a carnival of spawn knowledge, squad stomping, and instant depletion from people you never saw, that is where the honeymoon gets loaded into a trebuchet. For now, I like that the PvE side appears to be preparing me for that tension. Learning maps, understanding threats, managing inventory, valuing extraction, crafting better gear, and tailoring sleeves and perks all feel like groundwork for the PvP side. I just need time in open raids before I can say whether that side enhances the game or simply gives me a new list of excuses. And yes, I am very curious how often noise discipline becomes the difference between nice clean extraction and congratulations, you have summoned 2 opportunists with rifles. That is the sort of lesson extraction shooters love teaching, usually at volume. All in all, Active Matter has made a strong impression on me. It is addictive in the way these games need to be addictive, not because it screams at you to keep playing, but because every successful run plants a tiny, terrible idea in your head. One more raid, one more route, one more craft, one more extraction. One more opportunity to prove that the last disaster was an outlier and not in fact your entire personality. It is fun solo because the tension has room to sit on your shoulder and whisper bad ideas. It looks like it has strong potential with friends because nothing says teamwork like 3 people arguing over who heard the noise, who took the wrong turn, and who definitely said the extraction was north. The systems are rounded enough that I'm not just playing for moment-to-moment combat, I'm playing because the loot, refining, crafting, perks, sleeves, and progression all keep feeding the next decision. The important thing is that I have many hours to go. I still need to properly test open raids. I still need to see how the PvP settles. I still need to watch the economy, the balance, the long-term progression, and whether the game can keep supporting different playstyles without everyone falling into the same meta-shaped hole. Right now, though, I'm keen. Active Matter has enough personality that it does not feel like Tarkov, but different hat. The fractured multiverse, the anomalies, the active matter loop, and the tactical extraction structure give it a flavour of its own, and that flavour is doing a lot to keep me interested. And as a small aside, though not something that affects gameplay, the in-game soundtrack, expanded by cassettes that you loot in the wild, has to be one of the best I've experienced in a game since Red Dead Redemption 2 and Baldur's Gate 3. If you enjoy tense looting, slow map mastery, meaningful extraction, weird sci-fi horror seasoning, and games where leaving alive can feel more satisfying than winning a traditional match, Active Matter is absolutely worth watching. If you bounce off gear loss, dislike being underinformed, or need every system gently tutorialized before you feel comfortable, you may want to wait and see how it develops. For me, this is not the end of the review conversation, it's the start of it. I have more zones to learn, more systems to test, more gear to lose in increasingly creative ways, and eventually the open raids to face properly. So yes, I will be going back in, again and again and again. As always, raiders, stay safe in the zone, stay safe in the multiverse, do not trust the bushes, do not lick the active matter, and I'll catch you all next time.
Yeah, he just opened up the door. You got him. You can get him.
He opened the door, then ran back in. He's like, come on in. Okay.
There's another one coming at you.
It's an ambush, they're shagging me. Dude, it was dead set. I was like joking, it's an ambush. Then 4 of them rushed me with shanks. It's an ambush. Sends the pictures.
That smart son of a bitch. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, dude.
He knew what he was doing.